Hi there and welcome to Digital Transformation for Insurance, brought to you by Telegraph Events and supported by DXC Technology. So my name's John Cardle. I'm here to host today's event, but the people I have in the studio are much more important than me, so let me please introduce you to our expert panel. Gentleman to my right is Brian Baksu from DXC Technology. We also have Lydia Bozlanova, who's head of corporate and corporate development at Hiscox, and we have Martin Echters, Chief Innovation Officer for Legal and General. Okay, guys, so let's get today's discussion underway. We're going to talk about all things digital and insurance, but of course, probably the most important thing, I'm sure you agree, is of course the customer. And so let's maybe just start talking about sort of customer needs in the insurance industry and customers at home. I mean, we're all getting expectations are going up and up, aren't they, Brian? You know, digital is raising expectations. We all think we can get things on demand, where we want them, exactly how we want them. How are you guys coping with that? You know, customer expectation, and how much is that, you know, driving the changes in the industry, do you think?
Well, customer expectations, I think, is probably one of the drivers in transformation and the evolution that's taking place right now in the insurance industry. And I think what's happening is fundamentally the industry has been forced, let's just say, to move from this way of operating where everything has been inside out, where the insurance company, the carrier, the broker, the people involved in insurance have thought about, okay, what kind of products do we want? What do we think the market needs? What kind of systems do I need to build to support that? And then they go looking for clients. But the world has now changed.
So how are customers are now coming to you, or you're finding ways to?
It's now outside in. Where we're having to sort of say, okay, well, what is it that the client wants? Okay. And what is it that these new evolving markets and new evolving products that haven't existed before need? So this has really started a lot of change within the insurance industry, this change from inside out to this outside in, dealing with expectations of a generation that has always known the internet, always known having a mobile phone, always connected, and that's led to some fundamental changes on how insurance operates.
Lydia, what Brian's saying there about customer expectations or the outside coming in, does that ring true with yourself and what's happening with Hiscox?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we're definitely noticing that consumers these days, and especially the millennials and kind of the new generation, they're expecting much more flexibility, instant kind of response. They are looking for usage-based products where they're not necessarily tied in, let's say, to a policy that is 1 year long and very fixed. So they're looking for flexibility. At the same time, I think from insurance carrier point of view, we are thinking about kind of evolving not just kind of how we interact with customers and and providing more flexible and usage-based products, but also thinking more about more continuous engagement and thinking about how we can help them prevent bad things from happening and not just provide insurance. So we're thinking about how to become more relevant and create kind of stronger relationship and engagement with the customers.
And how might that sort of thing happen? How is the
for example, if you think about kind of in the UK, the flood flush kind of products where you install different kind of meters to track whether, let's say, something is bad happening in your house and alert people about the situation before it kind of deteriorates and actually floods your belongings and because everybody wants to avoid damage. So it's again kind of being more relevant, being more engaged and helping people prevent incidents from happening as opposed to just providing insurance when bad stuff happens.
Which is fundamentally about what all insurance is to help protect people from bad things.
And so Martin, obviously, a lot of this obviously relies on technology, and I wonder how much of the changes that you're seeing take place in the industry are being driven by the technology that's coming through, or how much is more, say, what the customer wants?
So I think it's a mix. So you have, for instance, certain things that customers ask for, but it's more their behavior that we're looking at. Like, how are they changing their behavior? So if they're no longer buying a car, but now getting an autonomous car that is given to them on a usage base, that will drive a lot of changes in the industry. So it's those type of things where like their behavior and technology are coming together that will take a lot of different approaches in the industry. It's also that like new technology can influence risk. If in your house, for instance, we can detect that you might have a leak or that you might have a fire or that you might have a problem and influence the risk, then again, that has a lot of effect. And then a lot of back-end processing. Well, now we have machine learning to do that more optimized. We have new technologies like Bitcoin and blockchain that like can do things in seconds that used to take weeks.
Sure. So it's very interesting because obviously there's so much technology now which is basically telling us more and more about human behaviour. And I guess that in your industry, particularly in the insurance industries, you're very interested in what people are likely to do and what they're not likely to do. So I'm interested in sort of finding out a bit more about, is there any sort of things that you've been learning about customers more, that things are becoming more clear about customers in the digital age and their behaviour? Brian, if you want to start us off with this.
Yeah, I mean, the insurance industry, of course, has always been a pretty data-intensive industry to begin with. I mean, we've always collected and used a tremendous amount of data. The problem has always been that a lot of that has not been easily accessible. We haven't been able to, drive, any sort of insights from that data. But now there's new technologies that are evolving that allow us to dig into that data and learn some very interesting things about our clients. And a lot of
anything that you'd like to share, anything sort of great insights into the human condition that we might like to know about?
I think a lot of it is leaning towards, and it's not just, of course, the data that's inside the walls of the insurance company. There's a huge amount of data that's out there in the world. The big data that is out there, and more of it every day. Social media, of course, contributes a huge amount to that pool of data about us. But I think the really interesting part of the insights that we're going to get, and we are starting to get from that data, is related to what you were saying around, being better at helping people avoid things, helping people avoid bad things, because you get insurance to protect you when bad things happen, right? Yeah. And there's a tremendous amount of insight now that's becoming available to help us, or for insurers to work with their clients to try to avoid bad things from happening before they happen.
And so, how much is that a challenge? I mean, sort of helping people avoid some of these problems. I mean, maybe, I don't know, Lydia, if you could maybe bring in on this. I'm interested in some of the challenges surrounding your industry and technology is potentially as a way to get in there. Could you outline us what are some of the problems that maybe you can fix in the near term, do you think, in the insurance industry? What sort of,
I think it's a very broad question. So you mean in terms of kind of like helping people prevent bad things from happening, as opposed to?
I guess I'm interested in finding out what things that I'm very interested in what the challenges that you're seeing. But what sort of things do you think maybe you can fix?
So, for example, just as an example, so in the UK, one of the big reasons for why people claim on their household insurance is water leakage.
Okay.
And that basically happens when when your pipes burst and because of the the climate, the kind of the age of the house and all that kind of stuff. And we have been piloting a technology which is called LeakBot, which is basically something that you install at the mains, kind of at the water inlet main in your house, and basically it kind of tracks the pressure of the water, and then it can detect whether there is a leak anywhere in your house, right? And I have to say, it's to me it sounds completely logical and natural that obviously I would want to have it, because I would want to prevent anything from happening. Because even if insurance pays out, which Hiscox is very good in terms of honoring the claim, but I would not want to have my paintings damaged or my floor or my walls, or kind of have all this disturbance to my domestic life if leakage occurs, right? But it's not necessarily, we don't necessarily see that people are super kind of engaged and interested in that. There is some kind of like barrier in terms of, even if people understand it's rationally logical and they should have it because it helps them protect their belongings, it's not necessarily so that they automatically jump on that.
Yeah, sure.
It's kind of difficult to
Yes,
create.
there's a barrier.
So we did a competition around escape of water, and what could you do? Could you make stop cogs that automatically could stop the water if some sensor underneath the bathtub, or like flow sensors we also looked into, and so on. So technology-wise, we found many solutions. The problem is the business around it and the services around it. So basically, if you only have a very small percentage of houses that have very big claims, then like you either know which houses, and that's impossible, or you put in all the houses, and then it becomes very expensive.
Is it, Martin? Would you say is it difficult to get customers to embrace the new solutions?
From my point of view, it's difficult to get customers to embrace because it requires extra kind of like, I guess, investment in terms of thinking from their side. Okay, why do I need it? Where is it going to be? How am I going to interact with it? While just insurance as a product is very simple. Okay, I have a problem, I'm going to call them. But how does this work with the other? Does it make my insurance cheaper? What does it mean in terms of...
Is this a challenge across the industry that people sort of buy a policy and they kind of hope that they never have to think about it again for 12 months?
That's a problem for insurance companies because they would wish that the customers think about them more than every 12 months. And obviously on the claim side, there's a whole different engagement. But that's the problem in general, I think, for insurance in terms of share of mind of customers, is that it's something that people only think once a year, hopefully, when they renew. And therefore, how do you create more frequent engagement and interaction and be relevant to the customers?
So one of the big challenges for insurance industry is sort of the engagement and getting customers to sort of listen to them, talk to them, and obviously think about things so they can sort of maybe get some of the potentially remarkably clever things which are coming to the fore. What are the challenges do you think are you guys currently facing, particularly from your own perspective? Would you say, Brian, let's kick us off.
Well, I mean that's again sort of a continuation of this topic, and we often talk about the white space, which is that sort of empty space between selling a policy and then something happening where you need to engage with the client. And how do you fill that white space with interesting things that can help them in their lives? And it is a challenge. I think there's a bit of a generational aspect to it as well. We're starting to see, the younger generation that's just becoming, to the point, just getting to that point where they want to buy insurance for things that they own. They seem to be a bit more, eager or acceptable of the new technologies, and they even like the new tech, because it's kind of interesting. And these ideas of water monitoring and Nest and having those the automated thermostats and
so you think that younger people perhaps are the idea of a smart home is more appealing to a younger generation?
It is.
Is that something that a view that you share, Martin? That sort of smart home, smart tech in the home, and
so people like those things, especially Alexa type of things, but. You asked what are the biggest challenges. I think the industry's biggest challenge is that there's so many things changing that we actually don't know what's going to happen, and a lot of disruption will heavily impact the industry, and we've seen this in other industries where that disruption comes and just changes business models, changes human behavior, changes how they interact with companies or which companies they buy from and sell from. So this is what I think would be the biggest challenge at this moment.
So the unknown is the sort of the big challenge. Is that
I come personally from other industries where I've seen this a couple of times already. So in telecom, you had all of a sudden Google and Apple coming in and basically putting the industry upside down. Having worked in Nokia Siemens Networks during that phase, you can understand that I've seen it very close. And this is what we're now currently seeing with Tesla and autonomous cars. We're seeing it with SpaceX and
this
air
is
travel.
This is an interesting point, isn't it? In the digital age, Lydia, we're seeing sort of these big tech companies arrive on the scene and suddenly making inroads into, and so it's not just sort of insurance companies, or it's not that might be sort of disrupting. It's sort of these other people who are in completely separate fields.
Yes,
sort of muscling in on your action kind of thing.
Absolutely, and the thing is that the challenge is that those companies have much bigger share of mind of consumers from the point of view of people knowing and trusting their brand, and in the context of us kind of looking or kind of being aware of Google and and Amazon's on a daily basis because we frankly use them all the time, versus an insurance company with whom I interact once a year. The fear and the challenge, I guess, is how do you keep front and center of mind of consumers when it comes to insurance, and how do you create that interaction?
Right. Do you think, guys, that we might well see sort of the Amazon insurance, the Google insurance, the Apple insurance sort of piling on in?
You don't know, and there's always that possibility. The challenge, with a lot of the industry right now is this dual agenda that most insurers are dealing with, and that dual agenda is, on one hand, we want to innovate and we want to connect with the client, and we want to be more like Amazon and Google in innovation and be able to take advantage of these new technologies. On the other hand, we've spent years investing in these systems, these ways of working, this culture that makes insurance today. And how do I, deal with these two things at the same time? How do I deal with this, I don't want to call it legacy, but this way I've been working and all the systems that support that?
Yeah.
And the other hand, how do I move forward quickly and deal with insurtechs and deal with the new technology that's coming and expectations? So it's a real challenge for the industry right now. How do I deal with these two aspects, this dual agenda?
But of course, some of these, the insurtechs, or indeed some of the big players, they don't necessarily have 150 years of legacy or even sort of 10, 15, 20 years of IT systems in place, right?
It's a mixed bag, because on one hand, that's what gives you the experience, and it gives you the knowledge about insurance and designing products and how to run an insurance company. On the other hand, it holds you back because you can't move fast, because you do have this, and if you don't have that, maybe you can. So who knows? It's a bit of a mixed bag there.
What are your thoughts, Lydia, on the legacy systems and the sort of the bringing in the new systems? I mean, Martin's going to be jumping in on that in just a moment. We'll go to Lydia first. But
no, so I think for me everything is relative. So there is kind of like a spectrum from like everybody who's doing things kind of like on a paper based. You still see around Lloyd's people with like big packs of kind of like papers, right? All the way
Are
to
things still happening in paper in the insurance industry? Is there
absolutely. You should walk across the bridge and
really?
and like see the big
paper,
folders, kind of.
There's
still the big filing cabinets still getting moved around. Okay, right.
Yes.
So there's still people who are doing that, right? And then you have all this kind of like I guess either new insurance company or of insurtech startups, which is all digital, right? And everybody else is kind of like on this continuum, and obviously as technology evolves, that spectrum kind of gets broader. So I'm passed behind you. But so I think most of the incumbents are somewhere kind of in the middle, right, and kind of trying to move forward. And I think the biggest issue is that as long as our competition is still insurance companies, we're all in the same boat, because obviously everybody's trying to replace their systems and innovate and blah, 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 but everybody's still kind of competing again. As soon as the competition will become much stronger from the insurtechs or from Amazons of the world, then we're competing on a whole different scale, which is going to be much harder for us, because they have technology, they have big data, they have capabilities that we frankly have not built, but we have something else that they don't have. So hopefully, but still in the technology space, I think it's a question of who do you compete against.
All right. Well, Martin, you've obviously got experience in both. Because prior to your role at Legal & General, you were working with some of these tech guys, these startups, and so on, and now you've moved into that. Interested in hearing your views on the legacy, but also, for the people who are listening here, I'm sure some of them wouldn't mind some advice on how to go forward.
This is a typical problem most big companies have. They basically have always invested based on a business case. So what are we going to do? Are we going to optimize with a mobile app this thing? Are we going to implement this new law that just came out, or are we going to do something new, completely different of what we always have done? So the first thing that I saw was that it's unnatural to do this last thing. So everybody else looks at the spreadsheet and goes, 15% or 20% return on these two projects. We don't even know how we're going to make money. So the first thing around innovation, it's hard because the current way of working doesn't work anymore. Second way, companies are structured also to do economies of scale and efficiency. And that doesn't work anymore, because if you look at banking, for instance, it used to be whoever had more offices everywhere, who had bigger call centers, was the biggest bank. Now you have a mobile app and you can be in every island or highland of the UK immediately offering service.
Yeah.
So that doesn't work anymore.
But surely, I mean, you're looking, companies still can measure their success by how many people are buying their products, the return they're getting, etc. Is that?
Yes, but in the new digital world, what the challenges measure is market fit and speed of delivery. Because if I can come up with a new product, I can come up with 1 million new products, but like, which one are customers going to buy? And this is where, like, finding that market fit and failing fast on the ones that you didn't find it
Right.
needs to be optimized. So what we've done is we've split digital from innovation. Digital is about, let's talk to our customers or internal teams of what they need, and innovation is about, no, we're going to fail a lot and fast, because we're going to optimize how fast we can, like, go and discard things that
So let me ask you, how a big well-known brand doesn't like the word failure attached to it too often. You know, startups can fail and nobody really pays any attention because they're tiny and they're new, and that's what happens in the startup world. But big companies, how do they get used to failing and explaining that to their shareholders, to their customers?
And this is the way we've done that is, and there might be other ways, is we have a very determined process where, like, initially, let's do something very quickly, inexpensively, and get to the next stage. And you can now, if you make that very cheap and short, do hundreds of experiments. And it's only a little bit further down that you're actually going to pilot something with real customers. So let's fail 100 times cheap before we actually go and launch something.
Okay. I mean, what do you think, Brian? Can you sort of, can a large company sort of, you know, stick beta on it and launch it quick?
Well, actually, we are seeing that around the world. Globally, a lot of companies are setting up what they would call innovation centers, right? Where it's a little piece of the company that they carve off, and they say, okay, we're going to have these people over here, and they're going to look at really new technologies, new markets, new way of doing business. They're going to pilot some things, and then from that, we're going to look at it and say, hey, these things are interesting.
They are literally putting the inventors into sort of a shed in the company and telling them to sort of create something.
Yes, so sometimes very nice sheds, but you know, and
a garage.
A garage. That's right, very nice garages. And we're seeing this around the world. I mean, this is a global phenomenon that's going on. Is how do I, you know, innovate? How do I test things? How do I do proof of concepts? And then the hard part for a lot of the industry is then how do I move that into my core business? And and this affects a lot of insurtechs as well. You know, how do I, you know, have this very cool, very interesting new thing, new way of doing business, a new feature, but then how do I get that into an insurance company's core business, right? And there's kind of this trough, and trying to bridge that trough right now is one of the challenges, and not just in the insurance industry, but in many industries, of getting that innovation, whether or not it's internal or external, and then bringing that into the core business.
There was, in fact, I think, a recent study done in terms of looking at the insurtechs in the UK and how there's been so many POCs, so proof of concepts and pilots and trials, but very few of them actually made it into production.
And there's a lot of investment going on.
And that's a real challenge, right? Isn't it? Like, you know, people have tried different things and engaged with insurtechs, and kind of, on paper it looks like it's amazing progress, but in reality, in terms of what actually made it into real life, is very few things.
And I think it's that we make it too hard for the fintechs to be successful in collaborating. So, first of all, a fintech goes like, "Where's your data? Can you give me technology-wise API to it?" And then insurance company goes like, "What is an API?" So this is where, like, if we don't make it easier for disruptors to work with us, we're going to be disrupted because they have no other choice. So what I try to do is to create constructive innovation, which is like, if we can't make it easier to collaborate and jointly find these new revenues,
Yeah.
then you're going to disrupt us.
It's interesting. I mean, obviously, the idea of a sort of disruptive tech startup coming along and scooping the lunch off all the big boys is sort of a well-known as idea. But I wonder how much is sort of, Goliath and David being friendly these days in insurance industries.
I think
I think this is happening in some of the banking industries,
yes.
similarly with you guys.
And I think it's more that. Well, one aspect of that is, dealing with the innovators and this sort of barrier. Is that it comes back to that dual agenda again, right? You have these systems that have evolved over time that run the insurance industry, but they're closed. They tend to be closed, monolithic systems. You can't get at the data. You can't, interface with them. And we're now moving into, well, how do I build digital platforms instead and replace these? Big question. The other one is with regard to a startup coming and taking a big chunk of the business. I think we're seeing most of the innovation. I don't want to say the low-hanging fruit, but the more easily accessible parts of the business, because there's still this core piece of the business that is highly regulated. So it's not that easy to get into it.
So the startups are going for the easy to get to
around
stuff,
here.
but yeah,
so they're not affected so much by the regulation, and it's a highly regulated industry for a lot of reasons all around the world. And then the other aspect of it is that there's still a big financial aspect of taking on a risk. So you have to have the financial wherewithal and the ability to take on the financial aspects of a risk, and that's not insignificant, right? So,
would you say that? I mean, does some of the regulations and which obviously need to have in the financial insurance industry, is that someone's getting in the way of some innovation? Does that make some things harder?
No, I think first of all, insurance industry is much behind general financial services and banking in terms of being regulated.
Okay.
So I think we're quite lucky for now. So I think we have quite a lot of room to play,
Right.
but it's coming. So it's only going to get it's only going in one direction. But I'd like to make a comment on kind of this between startups and incumbents. There was a saying that I read the other day. Somebody was saying that the battle between startups and incumbents is about whether incumbents can get to innovation before startups can get to distribution. Because what incumbents have is brand, knowledge, capital, they're regulated. What insurtechs have, they have innovation, but they don't have customer base.
Sure.
While incumbents have customer base, right? So I see it very much as we need to collaborate, and that's what I see more and more kind of successful insurtechs are the ones that find good partners in incumbents and kind of get access to their distribution, but bring innovation. On their own, I think insurtechs will, very few will be able to get to scale simply because it's very expensive, because it's all about Google and pay-per-click, right?
And I think that partner thing is really important because there's just so much to do, and the technology is moving so fast. You just can't do it on your own. You need partners to help you on all different levels.
Yeah.
Broadly agreed, Martin, then, that the big guys should be working with the smaller guys, more collaboration, that's the way forward, because, well, it's in both of your interests.
It's in both our interests, and for the startups it's also hard because they often underestimate. We launched something with an insurtech last year, and thinking back where we started and then seeing what happened, insurtechs underestimate the regulatory part, underestimate a lot of those things, and then actually find out that it is challenging to do those things. So yes, definitely.
But innovation, obviously in a company where everyone's got used to their roles, the idea of doing something differently isn't necessarily something which everybody wants to hear. So maybe we could talk a little bit about management of change and management of disruption, and perhaps for some of the people again who are listening who maybe are working on projects, maybe trying to find innovative ways to bring things forward. What do you have to say about managing the change and perhaps bringing people with you on this journey?
That's very difficult. It's insurance is sort of worked the same way for 200 years, right? And then suddenly now, because of technology, because of the changing expectations of the client base, there's new ways of doing things. So the technology leads to new opportunities. Those opportunities to take full advantage of them lead to the need to change the way you work. And that's hard in a lot of our clients and a lot of the industry. So it's a struggle right now, and we're often seeing that it comes in many different directions. One is the idea of having these innovation centers and dealing with insurtechs. Well, the whole culture on how you deal with smaller partners like that when you're a very large company, it's something that's just being figured out as well. And then, you know, driving innovation. You know, if you're a senior executive and you realize that change is necessary, you know, making those decisions about how are we going to change the way we work, which are going to impact real people, their lives, what their jobs are hard decisions. But really to take advantage of transformation and digital and where the world's working, there is a very large sort of cultural shift that comes along with it as well.
Lydia,
sometimes harder.
A consummate manager, I'm sure. What words of advice do you have to?
Well, I think so. From my perspective, and I'm very lucky that I work for a company where kind of our CEO and top management is very encouraging of innovation. We don't have anybody who's kind of head of innovation per se, neither at the group level nor in any of the BUs. But everybody is encouraged to kind of, what we call it, play in the traffic and kind of, you know, collaborate with insurtechs or try out new ideas. And I think this kind of tone from the top is very, very, you know, is very important, and it supports kind of, I guess, everybody at any level in the organization to come up with new ideas and try it out. Now, obviously, the difference is whether you can actually make it happen. And there, my advice is kind of start small and have kind of, don't try to change too much and kind of like, you know, bite off more than you can chew, so to speak, in any given experiment.
So grab a bit of that low-hanging fruit.
Yeah,
so
low-hanging fruit, kind of start small,
victories.
very narrow scope, prove that it works in one particular area before kind of expanding. And communication is really, really key. Communicate to your stakeholders, to the organization, what you're doing, why you're doing it, that you may not actually succeed, that you may fail, because that's normal in kind of experimentation. And, you know, and try to bring people along, because what makes or breaks innovation, from my point of view, it's not the tech, because tech we can mostly and always figure out. It's the people.
Sure.
And the processes and kind of how.
And presumably the people need to see that it's in their interests, though, Martin. I mean, they have to see that there's some benefit. They don't want to launch an app that's going to make them redundant tomorrow, right? So I mean,
so in general, our team focuses very much, or a lot of their time, on support functions, which traditionally have been sort of underinvested.
Well, what do you mean by support function exactly?
So everybody that is not either selling a product and having direct customer and can be expressed in like pounds that they generated, and let's say IT is also not in that group, because they understand like technology innovation better, because they're closer to the technology. But everybody else, from an HR department, a risk department, an audit department, legal, all these departments, traditionally, since they haven't been expressed in how many pounds did you bring in last year, over the years their budgets have been adjusted to, it's still working, but we have a problem. So what this has created in big companies is queues. If you want to work with this department, go and stand in the queue, here's a ticket. And that is what is the difference between a successful pilot and launching something, because now you need to go with this new shiny thing through all these queues in the company. So what we have done is we've gone and talked to all of them and said look, we can either take a ticket and stand in line, or we can work with you and see if things can be done better. So often solving a problem here and there in these support functions has given us or has brought us a lot of goodwill, and now there's often a secret backdoor if you need something done.
So you've built your reputation in the company, and then this has brought the other people to you to solve other problems. Is that what you mean by that? Yeah.
Exactly. And when we talk about innovation, we have also made it very simple. We said do you have a Harry Potter problem? And everybody goes, Harry what? And a Harry Potter problem is a critical business problem where even if I give you unlimited resources, you can't get a solution for. So there are a subset of those critical business problems where the team says, have no idea how to solve it. And then we say that's a Harry Potter problem. And it's a Harry Potter problem because now you need a magic wand from an innovator to come and solve it. So exactly at the moment where people run out of ideas is when they should come to us.
Okay. And tell me, Martin, how do you, I mean, when you're sort of looking for your Harry Potter magic wands and so on, how do you sort of find them? What process do you go to? How do you identify these, these potentially great solutions?
After solving a couple of them, we now have an oversupply. So we look at what are the ones that are always the same as the next one. So you can easily see that everybody, for instance, uses spreadsheets and sends emails around with them. So there's probably a way of working that is flawed. There's some reason why they can't use the existing systems. So focus on one solution for all of them, not making specific solutions for the 100. So that's where we focus now.
And I mean, training is a part of what's going on now. I mean, do you feel that people are tech savvy enough in your organisations that you need more?
Well, that's a huge issue right there, and a huge question around skills, training. As the world changes, and as these Harry Potter wands become available, you have to train people on how to use them. You have to find people out there in the marketplace that are savvy on these new technologies. And of course, that is a challenge not just in the insurance industry, but everywhere, is finding these people, training these people, internally, and then looking into the marketplace. And it's an issue everywhere. And as technology changes, keeping up with that technology is a lot of work. So that certainly is a big aspect of trying to adopt things and innovate, is finding the right people to do it. The other part of it is that sort of a continuation on what we were talking about there, and that is that when you do innovate and when you do start triggering cultural change, it does tend though to open up new opportunities. So it's not just scaling back and making things smaller. It tends to open up for those that are see the window, new opportunities for doing things that no one maybe had done before, and allows people to advance their careers, because it's like, hey, this is cool, I've learned about it, and I can help my company move forward with it.
What sort of skills do you think are most in demand in your companies, in your industry? What sort of stuff do you think, let's say as a young person coming through, or maybe even not a young person, but someone just wants to reskill themselves? What sort of stuff are you guys really looking for?
Well, certainly anything to do with the cloud. Cloud-based technologies and cloud-based skills are in huge demand. Anything to do with cybersecurity, huge demand as well. I mean, the new technologies around AI and data analytics, certainly blockchain type distributed ledger technologies. These are the hot things right now that no one seems to be able to find enough people.
What about you, Lydia? If you could
magic
create,
wand.
if you could magic wand a sort of perfect candidate to come and work with you and your team, what sort of skills do you think that they would have?
Actually, data analytics and having more people who are savvy about how to use data to drive business value is a really, really important skill. So we have recently done kind of a mapping exercise across the organization, looking at who is actually heavy users of data and understanding what skills they have and what are the gaps in terms of bringing them, kind of upskilling them in terms of using different tools. But I think going forward, we're seeing, we hopefully will see that the proportion of people who are heavy data users will double. Because industry, is becoming more data heavy, and the way we can drive innovation and products and services forward is by using data more and analytics as well. So that skill set is definitely in high demand. And it's very difficult to find good data people.
How about you, Martin? Who would be your favourite hires right now?
Yeah, so I think the list was there, and it's an overall industry and cross-industry problem, because everybody now uses cloud, uses mobile, uses AI, uses blockchain, and so on. As a tip on like how to attract the best technologists is like give them the most exciting things to work on, because like if you're working with technology from the 80s and with like programming languages of the 90s or the noughties, then like most technologists don't like to do that. So unless you're going to do blockchain, unless you're going to really work with,
I mean, isn't one of the problems within the technology industry that because it's moving so fast, you get people go to university, they learn the skills. By the time they've come out and sort of come into the real world.
It's a very good point. I think a very important skill is to be able to learn all the time.
Okay.
So never stop learning.
Yes.
Because if you,
But then are companies really supporting that enough? I mean, do they need to do more? You know,
more and more, yes. They're realizing,
learning,
it's a necessity. The world's moving too fast.
So you think the industry is starting to pick up the gauntlet and do more training?
That's
do
right.
more skills.
The days are gone where you can just have a skill
and
in a
that
certain
will last you
thing.
For the rest of your life.
That's right, and it'll last you the rest of your life. Those days are gone. We're moving into a world now that you have to be constantly learning.
And we create, and there's different words. Amazon calls them pizza teams, other squads or tiger teams or whatever. We just bring people with different backgrounds together and say like, you have a limited time to solve this problem, and this is when people naturally learn. So it's not like a computer-based training type of learning, but it's like, okay, you learn from these other experts things that you didn't know, and you're solving this problem with this new technology and new way of working. And this is where we see a lot of people.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, we're coming close to the end, so I think it's time for us to get our crystal balls out. We all want to know what's coming up in the future, so let's get our panel to all put down their predictions for the next 5 to 10 years in the insurance and technology industries. What's going to happen in sort of what's happening over the next 5 to 10 years, Brian? What's coming up?
Wow, 10 years. I mean, I have no idea.
10 years is
10
too
years.
far.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I mean, it used to be that you would be able to look out over that horizon and sort of be able to say, I can see where things are moving.
Yeah.
5 years now is like forever, right? But certainly, I think if I had to predict things, the rise of the machine, the rise of AI, cognitive computing, conversational computing, I think is going to become incredibly important and is going to change everything. I think there's going to be a big shift in the types of products that are offered into the marketplace to adapt to these, micro insurance where things are hyper personalized for that person and in small increments of time, which I think will be enabled because of the rise of cognitive computing and things like that.
I'm going to be much simpler. So I think there are two things. Number one, I think consumers, customers, clients will get much better value for money and much better service from insurance companies because it's going to be much more flexible, usage-based, digital, or kind of like omni-channel, so whatever works for people will be kind of provided for them. But also because we're going to be able to address our cost-based challenges, the value for money will be there in the sense that you will have to pay less for the same amount of coverage, number one. Number two, I think, is that the Lloyd's of London, which is kind of across the bridge, will be quite different in 5 to 10 years' time because the amount of paper-based and kind of people-based trading will reduce in favor of more electronic trading of risks, which I think is very difficult for some people to imagine, but it's going to happen. That's what I believe.
Fantastic. And Martin?
I don't focus on what will change in the next 5 years. I focus on what will not change.
Okay.
And there's 3 things that will not change. Your customers will want it faster, cheaper, and better. So basically, look at those things all the time. Don't look at like anything else. Just say, how can we make it faster, cheaper, better? Can we commoditize certain things that used to cost a lot of money with new technologies?
Faster, cheaper, better sounds pretty good. Okay.
Yes.
And there's new risk coming every day.
Yeah.
So basically, look for faster, better, cheaper for covering those new risks.
I like that.
Any types of insurance that might disappear as a result?
Very
Oh,
simple.
wow.
Very
Yes.
simple.
Yeah.
Give us a couple.
Car insurance.
Yeah, motor insurance. Yeah.
Motor insurance.
Really? Everyone says motor insurance is going.
Well, I mean,
Mine renews in April. Any chance by
yes,
then?
I think you might have to wait a little bit longer
Okay.
than that. I think the genie's out of the bottle, as they say, on that. Self-driving cars, autonomous cars. There's a huge amount of research
So
going
the insurance
on
industry is
that.
basically accepting that these things, autonomous
change in the
vehicles.
nature
It will
of the-
change.
Yeah.
There's still a car, right? So somebody has to insure that car,
Yeah, but
but
not-
whether or not it's a manufacturer.
Yeah.
It's no longer owned by families. So basically, the whole business now is about selling to all families an insurance product. But if they tomorrow say, dear Uber, Google, Tesla, whoever, just bring me a car now, and then it drives off 5 minutes later. Since they no longer own it, you can't sell it to them anymore. So that's going to be a big shift.
Right.
Fantastic. Folks, we are coming up to the end. It's nearly 2 o'clock. I'm sure a lot of our audience are going to have to go back to their desks to work, or maybe that's probably where they're sitting, eating their lunch, listening to today's seminar. I would like to thank all of our guests. Thank you, Lydia, Martin, Brian, for your time and your thoughts. I hope you've all enjoyed it too. My name's John Card. You've been listening to today's event, which is Digital Transformation in Insurance, with Telegraph Events and DXC Technology. Thanks for joining us, guys, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.